Okay, let's unpack this.
We are diving into a deep pool today, really deep. We're starting with something that looks, well, local.
Right, a specific policy failure involving surveillance tech.
Exactly. But we're using it as a lens, to look at this much, much bigger picture. The whole global setup of government deception and, frankly, control.
That is precisely the mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're zoning in on Humboldt County, California first.
Okay.
And looking at this, well, pretty shocking misuse of automated license plate readers, ALPRs, by the sheriff's office there.
ALPRs, yep. We hear about those a lot.
We do. But what this specific case shows, what it exposes, is this systemic issue, this huge gap between what governments say about surveillance.
That it's limited, it's careful, it's got oversight.
Exactly. All constrained and benign. And then what they actually do, which is operate with, essentially unlimited technological power.
And crucially, that gap, it's not an accident, it's not incompetence.
No, it seems engineered. It feels like a deliberate deception.
It really is. It's like the ultimate con game, isn't it? You've got the policy documents, the rules, the official statements.
All the paperwork.
Right, the paperwork. It's a stage dressing. It's all there to make you feel comfortable, to make you think, oh, okay, someone's watching this. Civil liberties are safe.
While the actual tech, the surveillance itself, is humming a long way outside any meaningful check.
Precisely. Operating in a totally different reality.
And the numbers from Humboldt County, from the sheriff's office, the HCSO, they give us, well, undeniable proof right off the bat.
Yeah.
It shows the policy failure and, the systemic abuse.
The sheer volume is the first clue. What did they find?
So get this. In just one 30-day period, this was early June to early July.
Okay, 1 month.
1 month.
Mm-hmm.
The sheriff's office basically facilitated more than 781,000 searches of the ALPR data they'd collected and stored.
Wow. Okay, 781,000 searches in a month from one county's system.
Yep, nearly 800,000. And remember, this is supposed to be governed by policy. Their own policy had very specific rules.
What were they supposed to do?
It said access to this data, which is obviously sensitive, had to be reviewed and approved by an administrator or someone they authorized.
Okay.
And crucially, case by case, before anyone got access.
Case-by-case approval for almost 800,000 searches.
And who was doing the searching? It wasn't just internal HCSO folks.
Oh, so they shared it.
Massively.
Right.
They gave access to this huge database to 285 different state and local agencies.
285 agencies. So that little county system became like a regional spy hub.
Pretty much. They turned this supposedly constrained local tool into a free-for-all data pool for hundreds of other departments.
Okay, let's just do the basic math here because that's usually where the lie falls apart.
Go for it.
781,000 searches over 30 days. If you spread that out evenly.
Which is generous. It probably spiked.
Right. But evenly, it comes out to more than 1,000 searches every single hour.
1,000 searches an hour.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the entire month.
So who is approving these? Case by case. 1,000 times an hour.
Exactly. What administrator, what team, however big, could possibly sit there and manually review the justification for and then approve over 1,000 separate requests per hour?
It's unthinkable. It's physically impossible.
It is. So that number tells us two things straight away. One, the policy, as written, was impossible to follow, like from day one.
Right. It was broken by design almost.
Or at least destined to fail. And two, the policy wasn't actually for accountability, it was for the appearance of accountability.
Yeah, window dressing.
Pure window dressing. A total pretense, maybe even written knowing it would fail, giving this illusion of control while allowing this massive unregulated data sharing with hundreds of agencies.
So this local mess, this ALPR policy lie, it's our starting point. It shows how when the tech scales up really fast,
which it always does,
the policy constraints they evaporate unless you have some radical change in how you actually enforce them.
And this local pretense, it perfectly mirrors the larger global reality of surveillance. This whole policy myth thing.
Where the paper says one thing, but reality is completely different.
Yeah. That's not a bug, it's a feature. It's baked right into how these intelligence operations work.
Okay, so now here's where it gets really interesting. We scale up from this, relatively small county sheriff messing up ALPR access
Godly.
to the absolute highest levels of government surveillance. Because this pattern, this intent to get around the rules, it's systemic. It's everywhere.
When you look at the big players like the NSA, the National Security Agency, We're not talking about finding accidental loopholes.
Yeah.
No, we're talking about dedicated teams, structured groups of people whose entire job is to engineer the evasion. The source documents actually mention the NSA employs platoons of lawyers.
Platoons of lawyers. And what's their mission brief?
It's explicit, figuring out how to stay within the law and maximize collection by exploiting every loophole.
Wow. Okay, so just let that sink in. It's not an oops, we collected too much. It's a core strategy. How do we legally collect the absolute maximum?
By twisting the policy, exploiting the gaps, it's policy exploitation as an operational goal.
And how do they do that practically? How do they manage that strategy?
Well, a key way is through something you could call jurisdiction shopping, meaning they choose which legal framework to operate under based on what they want to collect and, crucially, how much oversight they want to avoid.
Okay, so there are different rule books they can play by.
Exactly. The one people hear about most is FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That generally requires warrants, judicial oversight, that sort of thing.
Right, the FISA court.
But the sources are really clear. The rules are deliberately less restrictive under something else. Executive Order 12333.
EO 12333, or 12333, as it's often called.
That's the one. Can you explain why operating under that is so important for them? What's the difference?
Well, 12333 is primarily about foreign intelligence gathering outside the U.S. But its huge value, the loophole, is that it inevitably collects American communications too.
How so?
Because when the NSA collects data overseas, or data that just passes through foreign infrastructure, the legal bar is way, way lower than FISA for domestic collection.
Ah, okay. So even if the target is foreign.
Right. If their communication touches a server outside the U.S., or if an American's communication travels through that foreign infrastructure.
Which, as we'll get to, almost everything does.
Exactly. It gets scooped up under 12333 rules, minimal oversight required.
And here's the kicker. Congressional oversight committees. They are far less aware of operations conducted under 12333.
So if you channel the bulk collection into that legal bucket.
Bingo. You keep Congress largely in the dark. You maintain the public illusion that everything's being closely watched by elected officials, while the real action, the mass collection, happens elsewhere. It's engineered blindness for regulators.
And that structural setup, that engineered blindness, leads right into the tactic of plausible denial.
Oh yeah, that's classic.
We saw it big time when the PRISM program blew up in the news. Remember that?
Vaguely, yeah. The tech companies were involved.
Right. All the big Silicon Valley names.
Yeah.
They were scrambling, obviously worried about their global image, their business, and they issued these very fast, very categorical denials.
Denials of what?
That any U.S. agency had direct access to their server.
Direct access. Okay, that sounds specific.
Extremely specific, and you can bet it was lawyered to death. They could probably say, truthfully, nope, the NSA doesn't just plug into our main server racks. But the internal documents, the actual PRISM overview slides that got leaked, they described something different. They talked about equipment installed at company-controlled locations.
So not on the main servers maybe, but at the company's facility.
Exactly. Let's just picture that. It might not be the core data center rack, but there's a U.S. government black box, some physical hardware for filtering and grabbing data.
Sitting on company property, maybe in a locked room, a secure cage.
Right. Controlled by the company, or maybe it's contractors, but it's there.
So the line between denying direct access and basically being complicit gets really blurry.
Completely blurred. The company gets to tell the public, tell its foreign customers, no direct access, plausible denial maintained.
While the intelligence agency gets the data feed it wants via its own box located conveniently on site.
The policy deception holds, collection is maximized. That tiny legal distinction, no direct server access, masks this reality of pervasive physical access, or at least access via equipment they control on the premises.
It's quite the performance, real stagecraft.
It really is. And when we talk about maximizing collection, we need to shift gears a bit from the legal games,
important as they are,
to the sheer, almost unbelievable scale of the technology, the NSA's capacity. Because the deception only works, it only holds up, because the capability is basically unlimited. It makes traditional oversight models look, well, quaint.
The scale is everything. It's the foundation this whole structure is built on. And you have to understand, this commitment to scale isn't new. It goes back decades.
Like how far back?
Think early 1980s. The NSA gets the CRA-XMP supercomputer. Serial number 102,
The CRA, that was the absolute cutting edge back then, wasn't it?
the most powerful computer in the world when they got it, around 83. And this wasn't just, a faster processor. This was a monster, a statement of intent about industrial scale interception.
How big are we talking?
6 tons. The computer itself weighed 6 tons. It needed a 50-ton refrigeration unit just to keep it cool.
50 tons of cooling.
Yep, and inside. 45 miles of wiring.
Miles inside one computer.
And the performance. Also staggering for the time, its memory could transfer data at a rate of 320 million words per second.
320 million words.
Per second.
Per second.
Okay, help us picture that. What does that actually mean?
Well, think about a standard book, maybe 300 pages. That transfer rate is like moving the text of about 2,500 of those books every single second. 2,500 books a second in 1983.
This wasn't built to track a few specific targets under a warrant. This was built for bulk, mass ingestion, hoarding everything.
And that philosophy, that scale, continued. Didn't a former general say something about how they measure their computing space?
He did. He said the NSA doesn't measure its computer floor space in square feet like a normal building.
They measure it in acres.
Acres of computers. It paints a picture, doesn't it? This sprawling physical testament to total interception, a permanent setup for maximum data processing.
And this giant machine, these acres of processing power, they need to be fed constantly.
Constantly. We know about databases like Mainway. That's one place they stash data collected from the phone companies.
Right, the metadata mostly. Call records.
Detail records, yeah. And Mainway shows this constant churn. It takes in more than 1 billion new records every single day.
Or a billion a day.
From the telcos. And interestingly, to meet data retention limits another bit of that policy appearance.
Right, gotta look like you're deleting things eventually.
It simultaneously purges another 1 billion records daily. It's this massive, constant inflow and outflow, and that feeds into even more complex systems.
Like the graph in memory, that sounds important.
It's super important, yeah, but often missed. Why does it matter? Because when you're dealing with billions of records a day, you can't just run slow database searches to find connections.
Takes too long.
Way too long. The graph in memory stores relationships, who called whom, who emailed whom, maybe who traveled where. It stores them in a way that's optimized for incredibly fast analysis.
So you can see networks, links between people almost instantly.
That's the idea, to quickly map out connections across this gigantic, churning ocean of data, find the hidden links.
So, okay, we've got this immense, always-on machine, acres of computers, optimized for speed and finding connections, operating under these shadowy legal justifications like 12,333 and plausible denial.
A perfect storm.
But how do we know just how much domestic spying was really happening, despite all the denials?
We know because the proof of the government explicitly lying came from inside the machine itself, from the Snowden archive.
How so?
The files weren't just a random dump, they were categorized. And one folder was labeled, with beautiful, stark clarity, Boundless Informant. NSA lied to Congress.
Whittle softly. Okay. That's direct. Boundless Informant. What was that?
Ironically, it was an internal NSA tool. They built it to quantify their own surveillance activities, to map out where and how much data they were collecting.
Why would they need a tool for that?
Because the collection was already so massive, so overwhelming, they couldn't even track it manually anymore. They needed software just to get a handle on their own operations.
And what did this internal tracking tool, Boundless Informant, reveal?
Documents inside that folder, the one labeled NSA lied to Congress, showed that in just one 30-day period back in early 2013,
Right before the leaks.
the NSA collected more than 3 billion pieces of communication data from U.S. communication systems alone.
3 billion with the B pieces of domestic communication data in 1 month.
Yep. So this isn't just, evidence suggesting spying. This is mathematical proof from their own system. Proof they were systematically deceiving Congress and the public about the sheer scale of domestic spying.
They were saying it was limited, targeted.
While their own tool, built because the collection was too vast to track otherwise, showed billions of domestic intercepts, the lie was baked in.
And they could collect so much, partly because of geography, right? The U.S. infrastructure itself.
Absolutely critical. The US is, for better or worse, the physical hub for a huge chunk of the world's internet traffic.
So data from all over the world flows through US pipes.
Exactly. And the collection methods basically fall into two main types, upstream and downstream.
Okay, break those down. Upstream.
Upstream means tapping right into the core infrastructure, the massive fiber optic cables, the switches, the routers that carry the data.
Like physically splicing into the internet's backbone.
Pretty much. Programs like Fairview, Blarney, Oakstar, Stormbrew, they operate at that level, intercepting data while it's in transit.
Let's take one. Oakstar. What did that do?
Oakstar was kind of an umbrella. It involved partnerships with corporations. One partner, codenamed Steel Knight, helped the NSA get access to foreign telecom systems, basically funneling data back to the NSA.
So using companies to get access abroad.
Right. Another partner, Silver Zephyr, worked with them to grab sensitive internal communications from countries like Brazil and Colombia. This isn't just passive listening, it's actively getting inside corporate networks overseas.
And Stormbrew, you mentioned that earlier.
Stormbrew was done in close partnership with the FBI, and it focused on exploiting choke points right here on U.S. soil.
Choke points.
Places where lots of internet traffic gets funneled together because so much global traffic, even say from Europe to Asia, physically passes through U.S. cables and routers.
Right, the U.S. is the hub.
They don't need to go overseas to collect it. The world's data comes to them. Stormbrew just taps the pipe at these narrow points inside the U.S.
Maximum reach, minimum legal hassle under 12,333 because it's transiting traffic.
That's the logic. Geographic reality exploited for surveillance convenience.
Okay, so that's upstream, tapping the pipes. What's downstream?
Downstream is Prism. That's the one that got maybe the most headlines.
Right, involving Google, Facebook, Microsoft.
Exactly. 9 of the biggest internet companies at the time. Prism was about collecting data directly from their servers. Or, more accurately,
From those lockboxes, the government equipment on their property.
precisely. That setup. Prism allowed the government to pull emails, search histories, stored photos, even live chats.
And that technical arrangement, the box on site, is the perfect illustration of the policy deception, isn't it?
Absolutely. The companies could deny direct access or unlimited access. They could frame Prism as just a fancy, efficient way to hand over data they were already legally required to provide under specific warrants.
Like a digital Dropbox.
Right. But the reality of the government having its own filtering equipment physically located at the company demonstrates a much deeper level of integration and control. It wasn't just responding to requests, it was facilitating continuous access.
The plausible denial just masks this intimate, ongoing relationship.
And it wasn't just the external systems that were built for this. The internal security, or lack thereof, inside the NSA itself was... well, it was something else.
You mean how Snowden actually got all this stuff?
Exactly. How one contractor could walk out with, 1.7 million documents? It says a lot about the internal controls protecting this incredibly sensitive data.
It wasn't just simple theft, was it? It was more exploiting the system's weaknesses.
It was exploiting systemic laziness and poor design. Snowden apparently first got hold of some really critical stuff, like the Stellar Wind report about warrantless wiretapping.
How?
Through a feature designed for convenience. When high-ranking officials or VIPs visited his NSA site in Hawaii, their entire Active Directory profile, all their working files and documents would get temporarily copied onto a local server cache he, as a sysadmin, controlled.
So he just grabbed it from the temporary cache.
He stumbled upon it initially, unknowingly, but it showed him how easily accessible, highly classified data was.
And then to get the massive haul, the millions of documents.
He didn't just use his own login, he knew the protocols were lax. So he started borrowing other people's identities.
Wait, using other NSA employees' accounts?
Yeah. Often people who were maybe on vacation or out sick, people who wouldn't be actively checking their system logs. He basically went digital dumpster diving using their credentials.
Why do that? Why not just use his own access?
To cover his tracks more easily. He could have tried to erase his own digital footprint. He had the skills. But borrowing identities was simpler. It saved him the trouble.
And it achieved two things, right? He got way more documents.
And maybe more importantly, he demonstrated just how easy the system was to exploit, how incredibly lax the internal security was. If one guy can grab 1.7 million files, just by borrowing logins.
What does that tell you about the real security or in the world's biggest secrets?
It tells you the focus was all on collection capability, not on securing the data or ensuring accountability for its use. The tech capability ran miles ahead of any actual security or oversight.
Which, again, connects the technology and the policy deception. You need the deception to let the capability run wild without anyone really noticing or stopping it.
They're two sides of the same coin. The capability is almost useless politically without the deception that allows it to operate without constraint.
Which really forces us to ask, is this culture, this habit of evasion and deception, just a modern thing, driven by computers and big data?
Or does it go deeper? Is it baked into the history of these agencies, this prioritizing of executive power, of getting job done over public accountability and the law?
So what does this all mean when we connect the dots?
Yeah, when you step back. The policy abuses we're seeing now, whether it's that local ALPR screw-up in Humboldt County or these massive global NSA programs,
they aren't new problems.
Not fundamentally. They feel like the high-tech version of a very old story, a long history of U.S. intelligence agencies deciding they can operate outside the normal rules, outside the law.
Where does that history start?
You can trace it right back to the beginning of the modern intelligence state, even before the CIA was officially born in 1947.
Okay.
Back in 1944, William Donovan, who ran the OSS in World War II and was pushing for a permanent peacetime intelligence agency, he wasn't just talking about gathering information.
What was he talking about?
He stressed that this new agency absolutely needed the power to conduct subversive operations abroad, covert action, regime change, that kind of thing.
So subversion was baked in from the blueprints today.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And he also argued that they needed to harness private businesses to serve the government's machinery. The vision from the start was about projecting power, serving executive interests, sometimes explicitly against what Congress or the public might want.
And that idea that the agency serves the president directly has persisted.
Very much so. Historically, presidents have often treated the CIA less like a national asset, accountable to everyone.
And more like
his personal possession, his private army, almost.
And why is that view so dangerous?
Because if the president sees the CIA as his tool, he feels empowered to order actions even when Congress has explicitly said no.
Can you give an example?
The classic one is the Iran-Contra affair under Reagan in the 80s.
Right, supporting the Contras in Nicaragua.
Exactly. Congress passed the Boland Amendment multiple times, specifically banning the use of U.S. funds to help the Contras fight the Sandinista government. Clear legislative direction.
But the Reagan administration did it anyway?
They did. Using the CIA as their personal tool, they set up illegal arms deals, selling weapons to Iran, of all places, to secretly generate funds for the Contras, directly violating congressional will.
That's a pretty blatant example of using the intelligence apparatus against the legislative branch.
It is, and it's not just the CIA internationally. Look domestically at the FBI.
J. Edgar Hoover's FBI.
J. Edgar Hoover basically institutionalized operating outside the law as standard procedure. Take wiretaps.
Okay.
Hoover started using wiretaps extensively for domestic security based on a secret authorization from President Roosevelt back in 1940.
Secret authorization. Was it legal?
No. It directly violated the Federal Communications Act of 1934, which banned intercepting communications. It also went against Supreme Court rulings at the time.
But they did it anyway.
They did it anyway. FBI officials just kept authorizing these illegal wiretaps on their own say-so for nearly 30 years, until 1968.
30 years of illegal wiretapping as policy.
And planting microphones, actual bugs, that was even worse legally.
Why?
Because planting a bug almost always required an illegal break-in to install it. A clear violation of the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches.
And they do that routinely, too.
Routinely. Until 1966, when the Supreme Court finally pushed back and demanded the FBI provide a legal basis for bugging.
And did they have one?
Nope. None whatsoever. It was completely outside the law. This history just shows this isn't new. Working outside the rules to get what the executive branch wants is a deeply ingrained habit.
And this culture of illegal domestic action, it paved the way for programs like COINTELPRO, didn't it?
Absolutely. COINTELPRO, the FBI's domestic counterintelligence program, wasn't about investigating specific crimes. It was explicitly designed to disrupt, discredit, and neutralize political dissent.
Who are they targeting?
It started against the Communist Party in the 50s, but by the 60s, it expanded dramatically. They went after the civil rights movement, anti-war protesters, and particularly the Black nationalist and Black power movements. The FBI officially labeled them hate groups.
Which then justified intense surveillance and active disruption efforts. Dirty tricks.
Exactly, and there's a recurring pattern here that the sources highlight.
What's that?
Whenever there were increased domestic critiques of capitalism's failures, think recessions, inequality becoming visible, you saw increased domestic surveillance under absurd claims of terrorist investigations.
So economic anxiety or political criticism gets relabeled as a security threat.
Precisely. The state uses the surveillance apparatus to manage political and economic dissent. We saw it happen again more recently.
Like so.
After the 2008 financial crash, with the rise of the Occupy movement. Suddenly, FBI documents show investigations into Occupy activists.
Under what justification?
Vague terrorism predicates, the same pattern. And they've even targeted defense attorneys, like William Kunstler back in the day, labeling them security risks simply for defending unpopular clients.
So surveillance becomes this preemptive weapon against dissent, always masked by the policy language of security or counterterrorism.
That's the historical through line. The ALPR policy deception in Humboldt County isn't some random mistake. It's standard operating procedure, inherited from decades of this intelligence culture of overreach and evasion.
The connection is, it's chilling.
Yeah.
Because it shows the problem isn't just the tech, it's the institutional mindset.
Which brings us to the really deep cost. Beyond the legalities, beyond the policy lies, what's the true long-term impact of living under this kind of pervasive monitoring?
Right. We talk a lot about privacy breaches, data theft, legal violations.
All important.
But maybe the most profound effect isn't external, it's internal. It's psychological. What does knowing you could be watched at any time do to people?
This gets to the core goal, or at least the core effect, of mass surveillance. Whether it's 781,000 license plate searches locally or 3 billion domestic intercepts nationally, it connects right back to how authoritarian power works.
How?
It kills dissent before it even starts, in the mind.
Explain that.
If you know, or even just suspect, that the state is always watching or has the capability to reconstruct your entire life with a few clicks, you start to censor yourself.
You anticipate the judgment.
Exactly. You train yourself, consciously or unconsciously, to think and act only in line with what is expected and demanded. You avoid saying things, maybe even thinking things that feel risky.
That's the essence of what some call internal obedience, right?
Okay.
The surveillance system doesn't actually need to punish everyone.
Not at all. It just needs people to believe they could be punished. That chilling effect is incredibly powerful. The system effectively turns external power into internal obedience.
You stop doing things not because a cop is standing there, but because you've internalized the watcher. You adjust your own behavior preemptively.
And we see versions of this dynamic playing out globally, especially in how modern, flexible, authoritarian regimes maintain control. They often use this kind of internal moralizing.
How's that work? Give me an example.
Think about contemporary Russia. The leadership doesn't usually rely on just one strict ideology anymore. Instead, a key tactic is to foster the belief that societal problems aren't caused by bad policies or corrupt systems, but by the moral deficiencies of ordinary citizens.
Oh, blaming the victim, essentially.
Pretty much. It deflects criticism away from the regime. If you're poor, it's not the rigged economy. It's because you're not working hard enough, not entrepreneurial enough. If you're unhappy, you just need a more positive attitude.
So systemic failure gets reframed as individual moral failing.
Exactly. And that legitimizes the state's guidance and control over those morally weak citizens while keeping the underlying power structure untouched.
And in China, we see a version of this that's much more technologically explicit.
Oh, absolutely. In China, the state aims to be everywhere. And the big tech companies there, the internet giants, they understand their survival depends entirely on staying in the party's good graces.
So how do they respond?
They internalize the state's control mechanisms directly into their business model. It's fascinating. These huge companies voluntarily employ hundreds, sometimes thousands of people just to act as internal censors.
Wow. Their own employees policing their own platforms.
Yep, monitoring content, deleting posts, shaping the narrative. It's state-enforced self-censorship, often called harmonization of the web. The external demand for control becomes a massive, internalized corporate function.
And this isn't just about censorship anymore, is it? It's baked into their AI ambitions.
Completely. China's stated goal is to be the world leader in artificial intelligence by 2030. And their national AI plan explicitly includes developing intelligent surveillance, early warning, and control systems.
Not just for crime, but for
public security and, quote, management of society. It's AI explicitly designed for broad social control, not just catching bad guys. It's about using AI to ensure conformity and stability as defined by the state.
So the comparison is stark. The U.S. system uses this elaborate policy deception, legal loopholes, plausible denial
From the local ALPR lies all the way up to 12,333.
to achieve mass surveillance while trying to maintain the appearance of democratic checks and balances.
While regimes like China are increasingly open about integrating surveillance directly into social management, using moral narratives or efficiency arguments.
But the end result, that chilling effect, that internalization of obedience,
Yeah.
it feels tragically similar.
It does. The methods differ in transparency, maybe, but the pressure towards self-censorship and conformity is a powerful consequence in both systems.
So we started this deep dive with one specific local mess. A sheriff's office in Humboldt County playing fast and loose with ALPR data, enabling hundreds of thousands of searches their own policy made impossible to manage legally.
Just one small crack.
And tracing that crack led us all the way up to defining this whole architecture of deception. A structure built on, well, almost unimaginable technological power.
Buttressed by this long historical culture of intelligence agencies feeling they're above the law, serving the executive first.
And the whole thing held together by the policy lies. The constant pretense of accountability that allows the surveillance machine to keep expanding.
That local violation was the symptom. The disease is this systemic gap between promise and practice, enabled by tech and history.
Which means we have to end by confronting the raw power that now exists, regardless of policy, regardless of law, the sheer technological capability.
A capability that, if pointed in the wrong direction by the wrong people, becomes truly terrifying.
We really need to remember that warning from Senator Frank Church back during the Church Committee investigations in the 70s.
A pivotal moment of trying to bring oversight. What did he say?
He described the technology that the intelligence community already had back then. A system capable of monitoring everything, every phone call, every telegram, every communication.
Even in the 1970s.
Even then, and his warning, it resonates so strongly with everything we've discussed about policy deception today. He said, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, if the government ever turned into a tyranny, if a dictator ever took charge, the technological capacity that the intelligence community has already built could allow them to impose total tyranny. And the chilling part, he said there would be no way to fight back. Because any attempt to organize resistance, no matter how secret you tried to be, would be instantly known to the government through this surveillance apparatus.
The technology itself enables the lockdown.
Exactly. The policy deception is so critical for them to maintain now because the underlying technological capability for absolute control, it's already here, it's built, it's operational.
That's the final, sobering thought. The capability is absolute. The only thing holding it partially in check is policy, oversight, and law. The very things we've seen are so often bypassed or rendered meaningless through deception.
So the question we have to leave you, the listener, with is this. When you see the next debate about surveillance, maybe it's new cameras in your town, maybe it's some national security program, and you hear the official assurances about policy and oversight, what does your acceptance, your acquiescence really mean? Especially when the evidence of deception and abuse, from small counties like Humboldt all the way up to the NSA's billion record databases, is so clear, so overwhelming. What does it mean to keep believing the story?